Good morning, everybody. My name is Ray Vivier. I am, for many of you know this, I am a well-seasoned customs officer who has waited a long 37 years for the plight of traders involved in cross-border trade to be surfaced. We are reminded that their challenges are our challenges. We are partners in trade facilitation and are all trying to achieve greater access to international markets for South African exports, and we can only achieve real change if we work together. It is therefore a great pleasure to welcome all of you to this launch of the World Bank Group's Trade Facilitation and Gender Survey Report 2022. Today we will highlight the main trade facilitation challenges that women and men in cross-border trade face in South Africa. We will also spotlight the opportunities to improve the design of trade facilitation interventions to better address traders' needs within the scope of the World Trade Organization's Trade Facilitation Agreement. We are incredibly privileged today, ladies and gentlemen, to be joined by an illustrious group of speakers from the World Bank Group, the World Customs Organization, the United Kingdom's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the South African Small Enterprise Development Agency, the private sector, and the South African Revenue Service. It is my great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you a very special woman who hails from the exotic island of Martinique and who finds herself as the World Bank Group's country director for sunny South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, and Eswatini. She has been with the World Bank Group for 28 years and has held a variety of positions in various countries, focused on public enterprise restructuring, support to private sector development, regional integration, and management of the oil sector. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Marie Kelly for the opening address. She will share with us the gains to be realized of women's economic empowerment, as well as the costs of the gender gap to the GDP. She will also highlight her insights on how to overcome these challenges in the region. Over to you, Marie Kelly, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Ray. And my name is Marinelli, not Marie Kelly, actually Marie-Françoise Marinelli. So good morning, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted actually to kick off this very important launch of the World Bank report on trade facilitation and gender, which aims to look at ways to make trade work for women. First of all, let me start by underscoring the importance of gender equality for achieving the World Bank Group's dual objective of reducing extreme poverty and promoting shared prosperities. We know all that equal participation of women and men is absolutely necessary for an economy to achieve its full potential. We have not seen any team wins if half of the players stay on the bench. Similarly, we have not seen a plane going far on a single engine. In fact, in 2012, we issued the World Bank Development Report on Gender Equality. And I think that one key message was that giving women space, and particularly economic empowerment, is smart economics. Now, looking at trade, we also know that trade is an engine of growth that really helps create jobs, reduces poverty, and increases economic opportunity. And again, ensuring that women can equally participate in trade ensures that better outcomes are delivered for them, particularly in offering them access to jobs. And we know that when women are active, they contribute to the family in a very substantive way. In the case of South Africa, looking at the issue of trade, we know that during the pandemic, keeping the trade flows was absolutely essential. First, for essential goods, for medical items, other essential food, to ensure maintaining the international supply trade chain and to protect lives and livelihoods and businesses, but also after to open the economy, restarting the broad international value chains. So talking to trade facilitation more specifically, we know that in South Africa, as many other countries, traders have suffered from high costs and delays due to complicated and inefficient border procedures. And I've experienced that myself going through the borders, both for land borders and main corridors, but also at seaports serving continental markets. We know that efforts are being done, and the bank is part of this agenda to try to reduce these barriers to trade, to facilitate and integrate the South African and also the other sub-region countries' integration in the world economy through the value chains. But we know that more can be done to improve the processes, the procedures, to streamline so that the sub-region can be very competitive in these global value chains that are so critical. Now, making the link between trade and gender, as I said earlier, it's so important to have women participating. And we think that actually trade policy are gender neutral, are gender blind. But when we look at it more closely, we actually see that trade policies affect women and men differently. And in fact, we realize that data it's not generally measured properly to look at these differences. And I think that this is where this report is making a difference. And the bank has made a point to say, let us look at the data from a gender perspective, because improved gender disaggregated data is critical for policymakers to deliver informed policy responses to make trade more inclusive. So looking at trade facilitation measures that we think also are non-discriminatory in their design, when again we look at the data and the data collected through the World Bank report, we see that men and women traders are facing different trade facilitation challenges. And I have been able to see that myself as I had the opportunity to cross borders. So if we focus the attention in reducing, removing these trade barriers for women, we can, as I said at the beginning, see that we can make a difference for women, for not only the participation of women in the economy, but for the economy at large to operate in a more gender inclusive manner. And in fact, since we are, not completely in the post-COVID environment, but I think that one key element that we have got from the COVID experience is that the recovery must be gender inclusive and ensure that women are prepared to be protected, against new shocks that could come in the future. We indeed saw that in the context of the COVID, the women have been disproportionately affected because they were, most of them, in the front line, being it's the medical services, the health as health workers, but also being in the front line for essential services being provided as caregivers. So really, I think that this report and the data provided will really help in moving in the direction of a more open economy, a more inclusive economy, and particularly the recovery in the post-COVID environment. And I hope that the detailed information provided by my colleagues presenting the report will indeed illuminate and provide more information in that regard. So let me end by really thanking the UK government for the generous financial contribution that was made that allows this report to be produced. Let me also recognize the technical contribution that was provided by several actors. I want to name in particular the South African Revenue Services, but also Surveyor Global, a number of trade and business associations that provided their input in the design and the implementation of the survey. But last but not least, so many traders that have agreed to share their experiences and provide the input that, again, as I said, will provide substantial input in the way we are looking at the participation of women in trade, but in the economy more broadly, as I said, involving women is smart economics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marinelli, and my apologies for calling you Kelly. I'm going to write that down to nerves, so my apologies. Thank you so much for your insightful words. In other words, where women work, economies grow. So thank you for the participants and attendees. Please feel free to use the question and answer box and facility to post any questions you may have for Marinelli. Thank you very much. It is my great privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you an exceptional man who hails from an equally exotic country, from Mexico. He now finds himself as the Deputy Secretary General of the World Customs Organization. He has had a public sector career spanning 20 years and has held various prestigious positions serving the Mexican government, and was elected to the position of Deputy Secretary General of the WCO in early 2018. Under his leadership, several innovations have improved the way the WCO responds to the risks and the opportunities facing modern-day customs. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to welcome Ricardo Trevino Chapa to the podium to share his opening remarks and share with us the capacity building initiatives that the WCO has that will provide women with opportunities to move into higher skilled work through trade. The floor is yours, Deputy Secretary General, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ray, for your introduction today. Good morning to everyone. It's my pleasure to join today from Brussels, where the headquarters of the WCO are set, and where the House of Customs is hosted here at our headquarters. So thank you for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to start by thanking SARS and for the invitation and organizing this event. I know we have a very important report to present today, and my greetings and compliments today to the Commissioner of SARS, Mr. Edward Kiswitter, and of course, the Head of Customs, Mr. Theron, that today will present this important project. My greetings as well to Country Director of World Bank Group, Marie-Françoise Marinelli. Thank you very much for having your words today. And well, together with our colleagues from SARS and the World Bank Group at the launch of this important report, I'm very happy to announce today for the privilege of South Africa's society. This report was made possible by the United Kingdom's support as part of our strategic partnership for more efficient and inclusive cross-border trade processes. The presentation of this report is actually part of the work that we at the World Customs Organization have been doing overall on a global level with customs administrations across the world, but more importantly, with SARS. Over the past years, the WCO has been really trying to further advance gender equality and diversity. This journey started already in 2013, and back then we organized the first Women in Customs, Trade and Leadership Conference. Since then, of course, we have further accelerated our efforts. We have developed a number of initiatives and tools, including, for instance, the WCO Gender Equality Organizational Assessment Tool, and we also organize a virtual working group to share experiences between customs administrations across the world. In addition, we have an e-learning course available for the public, including traders, on our WCO Academy platform. I invite you to get a sight into it and go through this e-learning module. It's quite interesting. And with the support, again, of the United Kingdom, we also released a gender compendium showcasing practical examples from customs administrations around the world. And we also developed a more advanced gender and diversity e-learning course for customs administrations on how to mainstream gender within their agencies, including the relation with female traders and other stakeholders. We firmly believe that gender equality and inclusion are not just women's issues, but are to be the concern and commitment of everyone. In this sense, our work has also widened, focusing not only on gender equality, but also more broadly on diversity and inclusion issues. The challenge is to create the right conditions for equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities, which implies that all the interests, needs, and priorities of everyone should be taken into consideration, recognizing the diversity of different groups. Now, this conviction was finally reflected by the adoption of the WCO Declaration on Gender Equality and Diversity in Customs in our December 2020 Council session, which underlines our commitment as international organizations and as members of the customs global family to work together to advance on this agenda. This declaration, which was made at the highest level of the decision-making body of our organization, places gender equality and inclusion as cross-cutting priorities that require a holistic thinking. This is the approach that we promote with our gender equality organizational assessment tool. This tool, for instance, covers both internal policies, including human resource management, leadership, career development, and prevention of harassment, but also external policies, focusing on stakeholder collaboration and border operations. It is through this assessment tool that WCO provides several recommendations for what customs can do to meet some of the challenges identified, for instance, in this study. So in this context is that we've been collaborating with SARS on gender and diversity issues for a number of years now. SARS is a very active member on the WCO virtual working group on gender equality and diversity, and the SARS commissioner actually himself also participated in high-level exchange of experiences last year, and SARS was highlighted in the WCO compendium on gender and diversity as well. We conducted also a remote gender and equality and diversity organizational assessment resulting in a comprehensive report covering a number of good practices as well as identifying room for improvement in other areas. So this is all part of a broader partnership that we have with SARS for the implementation of the WTO's Trade Facilitation Agreement, which aims, as you know, to make cross-border trade quicker, easier, and less costly. It is about more consistent, transparent, and predictable cross-border trade processes at the end. Later today, in a few minutes, we will shortly hear from the World Bank on the key findings and recommendations of the study. Mr. Ernani Cekuchi, a longtime friend, will present this, and my recognition to him and his team. And what I can already say is that many of the findings are highly complementary to the work that we have been doing with SARS and that are aligned, for instance, with some of the findings and recommendations that came out of the Customs Integrity Perception Survey conducted last year, and the finding and recommendations of the Gender and Diversity Assessment that we conducted based on the WCO tool that I just mentioned. This work together with SARS from the WCO side was led by one of our experts here, by Tonya Hamami and her team, and they have done a magnificent work on this together with SARS and the World Bank. So it is very important to highlight the results of this report. We will, as I just mentioned, hear with much more detail from Hernani in a few moments, but just to highlight a few, the recommendations that customs, for instance, take proactive efforts to engage with the stakeholders, in particular women traders, to make sure that they are informed about customs policies and procedures is something to highlight. Of course, the overall addressing inconsistency in border operations is what the many tools and guidelines of WCO are aiming for. Also, the formal process for grievance and complaints is something that is covered by the WCO assessment tool, which recommends that customs establishes a platform through which traders can report complaints and also wrongdoings, including integrity issues and harassment issues. This is something that will provide a concrete benefit, of course, not only for traders, for private sector, but also for SARS in their internal processes. And of course, the safety at the border is something to highlight as well, which is an issue addressed by the WCO assessment tool. Customs must take into consideration the fact that women can face other type of risks than men, and that this should be taken into consideration in safety procedures and also when designing the facilities of ports of entry and so on. So these are just a few highlights of the report. There are many more issues to highlight there. Just to take the opportunity, maybe on another note today, I would like to link a little bit. We've been learning essential lessons from the recent 2 years from the COVID-19 pandemic. One of such lessons is the need to be prepared for swift adaptation and make the best use of opportunities that technology and digitalization bring to create effective remote work arrangements and facilitate online submission and processing of declarations from our stakeholders. At the same time, we have also noted that the pandemic caused a certain pre-existing gender-specific trends to be reinforced, including deepened economic disparity and increasing gender-based violence and the negative impacts on well-being due to as consequences of lockdowns. This reality has demonstrated further the need to incorporate gender responsiveness and inclusiveness as part of our resilience mechanism to accelerate recovery and reduce this risk. We must also be aware that for digitalization to be successful, there is a need to ensure that new technologies are accessible and can be used by everyone, including, for instance, the small-scale women traders to benefit fully from the opportunities offered by digitalization. Adaptation also requires data to better enable all of us to identify certain gaps and shortcomings, providing valuable insights to set priorities for further work in this area as basis for us to prioritize our work going forward. Today's study will be a very useful tool in this regard for SARS and the government of South Africa overall. Specifically, SARS has already made great progress on customs and diversity within its own administration and related to its own officers in terms of, for example, career development. Now, of course, it is key to ensure that the external engagement with stakeholders and most notably women traders will also further enhance, and hopefully this report will further help the momentum for this. Although, of course, also this recognizing that is also other government agencies that are part of the border setup and should therefore also be considered. So the challenge is very broad. But I want to acknowledge this commitment, this willingness, and this progress made by SARS, and acknowledge the work directly made by Tabile and Tombela and her team, and how we have been working together with her. This has been really productive, positive, and enjoyable in our relationship. So just going forward, we hope to further strengthen our collaboration with SARS in order to leverage their extensive experience. We believe that SARS has a number of good examples that could be shared with other members within the organization, and there is a potential for SARS to inspire others in the region and beyond the African region. So building on the report presented here today and the WCO Gender and Diversity Assessment, as well as the Customs Integrity Perception Survey, we're looking forward to further work with SARS on border reforms and its customs modernization overall. And on the topic of how to strengthen stakeholder collaboration from gender and diversity perspectives, especially working with women traders. So again, thank you for your invitation, and I wish you a very productive rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary General. Certainly, not only were your words, I'm sure, very inspiring, I certainly found them exceedingly inspiring, but I would suggest that we are very, very lucky to have an organization like the WCO that really lends so much to women diversity issues, women equality issues, and therefore provides for many of us the guidelines and the standards that we can very easily adopt to improve the lot of women and gender issues in the customs and trade arena. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker was to be the Commissioner of SARS, Edward Kisveta. He unfortunately has not been able to attend today due to some personal challenges that he has. Mr. Bayes Turan has very willingly stepped in to present on behalf of SARS the SARS opening address. Many of you don't need much introduction to Beyers. It is, of course, my distinct pleasure and privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce him. He's an extraordinary man, and he's from our very own sunny shores. He is currently the Director, Customs Border Management, Ports of Entry and Compliance Management. He has devoted 39 years of his life to customs and excise and has held various prestigious positions serving the South African Revenue Service during this time. He is arguably best known for the role he played in the customs modernization program that earned SARS the accolade of most improved customs in the world by the World Bank in 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to welcome Beyers Turan, our friend, to address us and to share with us the gender and diversity programs SARS has currently launched. The podium is yours, Beyers. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. I thought you were going to start by talking about the next exotic country being South Africa. But we all know, of course, that it is the best, at least for us. So let me start. Let me just get my bearings here. Right. So let me first acknowledge the World Bank Group Country Director Africa, Ms. Marie Nelly. I better get that right. And then the Deputy Secretary General of the World Customs Organization, Mr. Ricardo Trevino Chapa. The representative of the Government of the United Kingdom, Ms. George Barrett. Our partners from the private sector, our fellow colleagues in government and also at SARS. Good morning to all of you. We are meeting this morning to launch a report of survey study on the challenges that women and men, cross-border traders and customs agents, including brokers and freight forwarders, are facing at various levels. Incidentally, this launch event takes place in the month of April, that we in South Africa call Freedom Month, a month that birthed a new democratic country on 27 April 1994. The democratic dispensation ushered in a new culture characterized by a new value system that sought to totally depart from the ills of an apartheid past and which was later coded into a Bill of Rights that are enshrined in our national constitution. One of the core aspects that the Bill of Rights guarantees relate to building a non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic country in which all persons live with equal opportunities. Thus, these guarantees also meant that we needed to purposefully correct the ills of the past through various redress measures, including and especially gender-based discrimination in all fronts of our lives, including the trade environment. The world is only now starting to emerge from one of the most devastating pandemics recorded in modern times, COVID-19. The devastating socio-economic impact of COVID-19 has been so painfully glaring that almost all of us would have witnessed depressing stories to share on the impact that the pandemic has had on our own lives and or those that are close to us. What would however be central in all these tales is that the plight of our womenfolk in business, domestic affairs, etc., would have been even worsened in a society like South Africa, where small, micro, medium enterprises development and its support structures are still at rudimentary levels from a policy and a practice point of view. Thus stands to reason that they would be susceptible to many frailties associated with adverse change and can be impacted positively with targeted policy shifts and implementations. To bring this specifically closer to home, we as SARS are working hard to ensure that we support SMME development and we deliberately mainstream gender equality and equity in our administration of trade mandate. In keeping with our strategic vision, Vision 24, to build a smart, modern SARS with unquestionable integrity, trusted and admired by government, by public, as well as our international peers, the launch of the Trade and Gender Report couldn't have come at a better time. In the article titled Trade and Gender, a Framework of Analysis in March 2021, the OECD's Trade and Agriculture Directorate intimates that the channels and interactions between trade and gender for women as workers, consumers, and business owners show that 1, trade impacts women workers differently to men in part because they are employed in different sectors. In OECD countries, more often in services. Secondly, trade lowers prices for consumers, which particularly increases the purchasing power of more vulnerable groups, where women are disproportionately represented. And thirdly, higher trade costs impede smaller businesses' access to international markets more than large firms, which impacts women who tend to own and lead smaller businesses. It is against this backdrop that SARS recognizes the importance of playing its role in implementing gender and diversity programs geared toward redress, not just as a good thing to do, but in partial fulfillment of constitutional prescripts, as outlined in the foregoing above. Fellow colleagues, at the heart of SARS as an organization is our 12,500 employees, for which we are committed to develop a high-performing, diverse, agile, engaged, and evolved workforce in keeping with our strategic objective 4. Accordingly, SARS has established a Gender Equality and Persons with Disability unit that is dedicated to coordinating pertinent programs and provide an informed direction whilst placing gender and diversity issues at the center of our work. As an institution, we aspire to create a safe, diverse, equal, inclusive, conducive, and gender-based violence-free environment for differently abled persons, for all to realize their full potential. SARS is working tirelessly to unpack the root causes of gender inequality within the organization and is collaborating with institutions such as the South African Human Rights Commission and the Commission for Gender Equality to support it on its transformation journey. Additionally, the institution of the SARS Women in Leadership Committee at an enterprise level. Its mandate is to serve as a catalyst to develop and empower leadership competencies, specifically as it pertains to women and within the context of the SARS leadership model of excellence. Makes me proud to see and hear of the impact that women leaders, both at an enterprise and regional level, are making while stewarding our resources. Some of the flagship interventions for the gender equality and persons with disabilities include, but are not limited to the following. The first being SARS says no to gender-based violence pledge, the GBV pledge as we call it here. Over 87% of SARS employees have signed the pledge. Many supporting interventions continue to be implemented to attain 100% completion of the pledge. While signing of the pledge is not compulsory, we continue to encourage all SARS employees to lend their voice to say no to gender-based violence. SARS has begun work to institutionalize a survivor approach to internal GBV cases. This phase is still underway with virtual stakeholder engagement sessions to develop a comprehensive SARS response to GBV still taking place. This entails the review of the value chain in responding to reported cases of GBV. Workshops hosted by a GBV survivor are being rolled out, providing a toolkit for moving past trauma and dealing with issues that hinder individuals from reaching their full potential. Second initiative is men's forums in the regions. So the men's forums have been piloted in regions to ensure that men continue as positive partners in advancing gender equality and ending GBV in the workplace. These forums support in putting a spotlight on GBV and improving our collective consciousness and pave the way for a conducive environment for gender equality. This is part of mainstreaming gender issues as societal issues and not just as women issues. All hands need to be on deck in tackling the scourge. The third area is international engagements and cooperation with international bodies like SACU, the WCO Network for Gender Equality and Diversity in Customs, and the UN Women in the Sharing of Strides Towards Diversity and Equality. SARS continues to take heed of feedback from these engagements, and in some instances, SARS has been hailed for its work towards diversity and inclusion. The next area is a reasonable accommodation. Our technology and solutions delivery and the corporate real estate are leading working groups that seek to address concerns raised in respect of reasonable accommodation of women and persons with disability across the organization. This work will also ensure that SARS provides equal public service to all. Then, trade industry. SARS has commenced engagements with the trade industry for institutions and corporates in the industry to adopt the GBV stance in the industry. Discussions are underway to engage on an industry no to GBV pledge, as well as some pilot projects that prioritize safety and equality for women within the industry. So perhaps as we come to the end of my input, a reminder of what will a winning look like and feel like. Well, firstly, it would be when we have social cohesion and equity in the workplace and influence our society in a positive way. Then, women in leadership positions represented at all levels and across all clusters, and SARS being a nurturing and enabling environment for women. Then, when men are included in conversations and take action on matters that are experienced as challenges and barriers experienced by women. When SARS values and employee rights are lived and experienced by all employees. When we have unleashed the full potential of each person at SARS and allowed them to have a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. And lastly, when we can all thrive and feel safe to be our authentic selves without any fear of victimization, simply on the basis of our gender, our personal orientations, our creed, our color, or our social class. So with the above snapshot of the work SARS is doing on gender and diversity issues, I again welcome all the support extended to us by the World Bank Group and the support of the government of the United Kingdom. In keeping with our strategic objective 8, working with and through stakeholders to improve the tax and trade ecosystem, we appreciate the collaborative relationship that we have with you. Look forward to the findings of the report that will be presented later today, including its recommendations, which will go a long way in helping us to structure our responses and target our actions appropriately. I hope the outcome of this report will open our eyes to new areas we need to pay attention to and also strengthen our resolve and program in areas of confluence. I thank you for your attendance and your participation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beyers. I know that the Commissioner would be very sad not to have been here today. I know that he is really passionate about women equality and GBV issues. We're going to go to a video and then we'll get back to speakers. Thank you very much.
We at the South African Revenue Service aspire to create a safe, diverse, equal, inclusive, conducive, and gender-based violence-free environment for differently abled persons, for all to realize their full potential. We have taken bold strides to ensure the delivery on the organizational strategic intent of diverse and engaged employees in a high-performance culture. This is underpinned by the constitutional aspiration of dignity for all, gender equality, and respect for human rights. We embrace the principle that women's rights and the rights of persons with disabilities are human rights. Led by Commissioner Kisvetter, SARS has enhanced consultation and engagement structures and policies, including new launched initiatives that are aimed at inculcating the values of human dignity, equality, and ensuring a non-racial and non-sexist workplace. Through many interventions, SARS is focused on developing and supporting a journey to advancing gender equality and diversity. We believe that the future of our country lies in ensuring equality for all to realize their full potential.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce another very special woman who is the head of trade program in South Africa for the UK government and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office lead for the UK flagship Trade Forward Southern Africa program. She has 2 decades of experience spanning academia, policy development and programming, and has been, sorry, my phone is interfering, and has been working closely with government and private sector stakeholders in Southern Africa to contribute to a more inclusive economic growth and poverty reduction, particularly through the empowerment of women in trade. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have George Barrett join us today. George, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm delighted. If I may start with all protocols observed, I am, as I said, delighted to represent the UK and the British High Commission here in South Africa on the launch of this excellent report. The UK is a leading proponent of a more inclusive and liberalised international trade regime and rule-based international system. The adoption of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement measures create a predictable and transparent environment to grow international trade and presents opportunities to elevate people out of poverty and promote greater inclusion of women, of youth and other disadvantaged and minority groups. As some of you may know, the UK has been working with South Africa and in partnership with the World Customs Organization and World Bank to deliver critical trade reforms through the Trade Facilitation Programme for middle-income countries since August 2019, I nearly said 1919. The overall objective of this programme has been to help boost inclusive growth, reduce poverty and promote greater gender inclusivity by tackling specific barriers to cross-border trade. The primary benefit of the programme accrues to South Africa as a reduction in trade costs and a reduction of time and processes and transactions achieved by the provision of clear information to traders and minimising bureaucratic and non-transparent processes required for importing and exporting goods. This in turn improves the outlook for South Africa SMMEs in terms of opportunities to access international markets, which not only generates additional income and welfare gains, but also promotes entrepreneurship at a micro level, delivering welfare benefits to users, consumers, and producers, including people in lower income and poorer communities. The programme has delivered a series of trade facilitation interventions by identifying unnecessary physical and process barriers to trade, such as a lack of access to availability and understanding of trade-related information, processes, requirements, and opportunities in the market, by inefficient and opaque practices, bureaucratic red tape, and unnecessary complexity, and a lack of investment in public services relevant to growing export trade. These factors and many others in turn impact on a country's economic growth and its capacity to effectively reduce poverty and turn the tide on deepening inequality, which we also know is often experienced by people differentially, as has been referenced today, and as this report highlights, depending on their intersectionality of their position in society and in the economy, and which have been compounded, again has been expressed today, by the still not fully realised impact on global trade of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic. The report being launched today is one of the interventions under the partnership and response to the key barriers in the SARS and World Bank Group trade report, seeking to investigate the trade facilitation and gender dimensions in South Africa, providing solid recommendations for tackling key barriers experienced by women in the local context, but of course echoing those that are experienced in other parts of the world. And partnership with the UK doesn't end here. We have our flagship Trade Forward Southern Africa programme, which has been mentioned, and which is designed to address non-tariff barriers to trade in information, standards and customs compliance, value chain development, and critically does so by prioritising the inclusion of women and providing targeted export trade training to female entrepreneurs and traders across the Southern African Customs Union and Mozambique. We know that transformative change is achievable. The SARS 2012 award is testimony to this. However, and echoing earlier speakers today, we stand the best chance of realising it through continued partnership and collaboration, so that the sum of our efforts move the dial further than our isolated ones would. So I encourage colleagues and partners on the call today to continue to engage with us proactively, and us with you, to identify concrete and innovative and creative ways to implement the 8 important recommendations set out in this report. We also look forward to seeing how the upcoming time release study will complement this work. I'd like to thank you all again, the World Customs Organization, the World Bank, programme teams and the South African Revenue Services for hosting us today, and of course to the South African government being a continued partner in the Trade Facilitation Support Programme. We look forward to deepening our working relationship to realise the ambition of a more inclusive and equitable global trading environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George, and thank you to the UK government for the support. I'm looking forward to engaging further with you and how we can improve the plight of women traders in the Southern African context. It may not be lost on everybody, I hope, that George and I both have what is termed unisex names. So I guess it's by no surprise that you'll find us at the forefront of leading women initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great pleasure to introduce to you a very special friend who embodies the term global citizen. He is currently the Senior Trade Facilitation Specialist at the World Bank Group, responsible for leading projects and providing support and advisory services to the implementation of trade facilitation and customs and border management reforms. He is an engineer with over 27 years of solid experience in customs and border management, capacity building, and development. He has previously served as the Director of Capacity Building at the World Customs Organization and as the Undersecretary of Customs and International Relations for the Secretariat of the Federal Revenue of Brazil. He has varied international experience, which includes diagnostic missions, technical consulting, strategic and project planning, and training in more than 40 countries in the Americas, in Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. As I said, global citizen. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to welcome Ernani Chikuchi to present the Trade Facilitation and Gender Survey Report 2022 and to give us insights on the role of international trade in promoting gender equality and improving the outcomes for women. Over to you, Ernani.
Thank you very much, Ray. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to present the findings of this very important report on trade facilitation and gender. Let me start greeting all the speakers that preceded myself, the country director from the World Bank, Marie-Françoise Marinelli, the Deputy Secretary General, Ricardo Trevinho, the Commission of Customs, Steron, on behalf of the Commission of SARS, Eduardo Kisvetter, that was not able to join us this morning. Ray, it's a great pleasure to see you again. George Barrett from the UK FCDO has been a great partner in the development of this agenda and in the entire trade facilitation program in South Africa. I will start sharing a presentation with you all. Just confirm, please, Ray, if you can, the slides are properly projected.
Thank you, Ernani. You can move it to PowerPoint presentation mode. Here we go. Thank you very much.
Okay. First of all, just to reinforce the message that Marie-Françoise already conveyed, that the gender equality is central to the World Bank Twins goals of ending extreme poverty and increasing shared prosperity. So this agenda is very central to all the work and partnership we have with basically all the countries that we work with. And this could not be different, particularly from the angle of the trade agenda. In fact, the World Bank has already produced a number of analytical work and reports that reinforce some of these messages. For instance, we know by research that the workers employed in firms or sectors integrated into global value chains have 50% better, more chances for finding formal employment. So it's a question of improving formality. Countries that are more open to trade and investment have higher levels of gender equality. From the private sector perspective, the firms that are involved in international trade in developed countries hire more women than men and provide them with better pay, training, and job security. And as already mentioned also by buyers, trade also benefits women as consumers and decision makers. So all these are some of the specific benefits of trade as a mechanism to convey gender equality in the societies. Why this study is important? Why we are doing this study? The first issue is to recognize that despite the recognition of the importance of trade and trade facilitation and gender equality, we still have a global lack of data on how trade facilitation interventions impact traders by gender at the firm level. And the study, the purpose of the study is to address some of these questions. What are the trade facilitation related obstacles to traders? What they experience differently for women-led and men-led firms? And how do trade facilitation reforms impact men and women differently? So the study fill in this gap and provide gender-specific data to support basically policy design and reform and actions that will improve the participation of women in the international trade and profiting from the trade facilitation initiatives. So we expect with the study to identify the nature of these barriers for women traders and customs agents. Customs agents here being understood as both brokers and freight forwarders in conducting formal cross-border trade in South Africa. The focus of the study primarily was on the WTO trade facilitation agreement. So we looked at the various provisions of the agreement, specifically the movement, release, and clearance of goods, the measures for effective cooperation between customs and other appropriate authorities. We heard already this morning a lot about all the efforts that SARS is doing to advance with the gender agenda, gender and inclusiveness agenda, but we know that the trade facilitation agenda is broader than customs, also engage many other agencies that perform their authorities and controls at the borders. So it's important also to look from this perspective, that look for the government as a whole of government in addressing this agenda. In addition to the primary focus, the survey also looked at specific issues like the impact of the COVID-19 on the work and business of the traders and these professionals on the customs and the trade environment, and the issues like safety at the borders and access to finance as preconditions to expand the business and expand participation in the border. The survey worked with about 50 questions that were applied to both trading firms and customs agents, and it was developed in a collaborative effort, including the different units within the World Bank Group, but also in the collaboration with the WCO, and as it was mentioned before, with the support from the UK government. We had about 204 traders that responded to the survey, 82 women-led and 122 men-led firms, and 78 customs agents, were 24 women and 54 men. And I have to say that we could reach these numbers due to a high commitment of the the company that helped us survey a global in delivering, applying the questionnaires, but also from the SARS team that helped us in reaching out to the community, chasing the traders, and particularly in a moment that the COVID pandemic was very high in the country, and the presidential meetings were not possible to be performed, and without the support and commitment from these colleagues and people, we will not be able to conclude the report and present this morning the findings that we are going through in a few minutes. I would like also to highlight that we are doing, the World Bank group is doing similar works in terms of the survey on trade facilitation and gender. So South Africa joined these groups, and this also help us to have a glimpse on what are the common challenges faced by multiple jurisdictions and multiple economies, and what are common issues, and eventually what can be addressed as common policies and the reforms for all these countries. So these reports are available. They are public reports. Anyone that are interested later on can go and survey the reports and also check the findings in other jurisdictions. And I will now look specifically on the key trade facilitation survey findings. Because of the limited time we have this morning, I'm not going into all the details of the report. The report is very comprehensive, so I encourage anyone that's interested in the full report that go and Google the World Bank Trade Facilitation and Gender Dimensions in South Africa, and we are going to get to this link here. You can take a picture of the link also, and you can access the report, download the report, and go through all the details the report presents. But now I have the pleasure to highlight some of the main findings of the report, particularly from the angle of the gender issues. So the first point that came very strong in the survey is that women traders have more difficulties in accessing information on official regulations and procedures related to cross-border trade. So only 20%, only 24% of women traders, then men traders, 35% responded that they can easily access and find information. This is probably an issue that should be included in a trade facilitation reform, and the government should consider developing, for instance, trade information portals or other measures to reduce this gap and ensure that all the regulations and procedures are properly conveyed and understood by the traders, and that they can also benefit from the international trade agenda. More women traders find the official regulation and process difficult to understand than men traders. So the gap is reversed among customs agents, and here probably the customs professionals also have a different level of preparations and and networks for accessing the regulations. So the customs agents demonstrated that at least in this dimension, the women has less difficulty than men in accessing the information. Additionally, more women traders find access to information challenging because the government information mechanisms are not user-friendly and are not centralized into a single platform. Though the various border agencies have their own regulations published in different locations, the information are not compiled and prepared and disseminated into a single platform. And here, many measures could be taken to reduce this gap. For instance, the development of guidelines and manuals using layman's language, specifically with the appropriate communication skills to address these communities, using the network of business associations and also from the customs agents associations, partnering with the private sector to convey the message, the regulations, the procedures in a language that's accessible to all the participants in the international trade. But in the medium and long term, we see the need not yet fulfilled for the government to really consider a trade information portal So in other words, a platform that compile all the informations, regulations, and guidelines for the trade environment that can become a mechanism for reducing the difficulties to access information. Among customs agencies, half of the surveyed women customs agents compared to 31% of men customs agents report that access to information is challenges because not all agencies have comprehensive information available. So we saw this morning the commitment from SARS in regarding the trade facilitation agenda, but also to the gender equality. But this same level of commitment should be adopted by all the other agencies involved in the process. And one of the issues that we are going to see later on this morning is the lack of visibility of the National Committee on Trade Facilitation, or a similar body, a similar governance body that can really drive the reforms and coordinate the efforts of the multiple agencies to achieve this type of solution, like a single trade platform. Another dimension of the report that came really strong is not only about the information, is about the consistency of processes and procedures at the borders. And these require many different initiatives to raise the level of consistency and processes, including capacity building and training for staff, internal staff, but also education provided to the private sector. It's important that the border procedures and processes are really understood by all the participants. And the survey indicated that the fewer women traders, 40% in comparison to men traders, 56%, find that border processes are consistently applied. So here again we see a discrepancy on this perception, and it's a clear indication that the trade facilitation measures are not impacting the women and men in the same manner. So we have to do more to ensure that the consistency of border procedures and processes are perceived in equally way by men and women that operate at the international trade. And this is much more for traders than for the customs agencies. And of particular attention, what's really surprising is the difference on the particular issue for the payment of fees and duties, the process related for payment of fees and duties, where women traders indicated much higher level of inconsistency than men traders. And here is not only about fees and duties of customs, but all fees and duties that are eventually collected by all the agencies that perform some functions at the borders. Equally important is the consultation mechanism. In other words, the capacity of the government to engage the private sector and have a productive dialogue related to trade facilitation reforms. Here, the finding indicated that independently, regardless of the gender, most traders, 76%, and customs agents, 58%, reported that they are not or only regularly consulted or have been provided opportunities to submit comments on legislative changes regarding official cross-border trade process and procedures. So we find this as one of the priority areas for attention from the government. And of course, normally this is addressed by the National Committee on Trade Facilitation. So not only customs, because they require engagement and coordination of all agencies working on the international trade agenda. But here is one of the trade facilitation findings that's very important, regardless of the gender dimension. And the majority of consulted trading firms do not feel that the feedback is taken into consideration. And 41% of the customs agents also share this perception. So it's not only enough to have the consultation mechanism, but also accountability, providing feedback on how the inputs and how the perceptions and insights provided by the private sector is taken into consideration in the design and implementation of the reforms. So this is also another finding that probably demands engagement from all the agencies to set up appropriate mechanism for consultation, but also for displaying on how the results of the consultation are used in the reforms associated with the trade facilitation agenda. As I previously mentioned, awareness of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. Here, I make a parenthesis just to highlight that in the South African setting, the National Trade Facilitation Committee is very much focused on the provisions of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, on what was exactly negotiated in the agreement. In many other jurisdictions, the National Trade Facilitation Committee has a broader role, and they basically became the governance body to promote the coordinated approach for trade facilitation reforms, even reforms that goes beyond the agreement. In the case of South Africa, the National Trade Facilitation Committee is not well known, is not perceived by the traders. So only 15% of women traders and 8% of men traders are aware of the existence of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. Among customs agents, the awareness is slightly higher, but this is also natural because not different from other jurisdictions, the customs agents perform a very important function for the traders. So similar to other countries, in South Africa, the customs agents provide services to facilitate the imports and exports, and they are the ones that have more daily contact with the agencies, with customs and the other border agents. So they are more closer to the regulations and to the agenda, and they can really follow the National Trade Facilitation Committee. But as you can see from the finding, we still have a lot of room for improvement in terms of providing visibility of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. Detention of goods was one of the measures that we also raised the questions, and here majority of firms that had goods detained confirmed that they were promptly informed of the detention, and the companies and the traders that informed that had goods detained, more women referred to problems related to licenses, permits, certificates, or authorizations that are normally performed by other border agencies. So the women in general faced more challenges with the licensing requirements, and for these reasons had their goods detained more than men. And men traders had much more issues and problems related with the compliance on customs valuation, the customs declaration, and classification of goods. That's a more traditional area of working of customs. So probably when you look from the gender angle here, we have to promote some work with the agencies responsible for licenses, permits, and certificates to ensure that their regulations are also properly understood by women traders, and by doing that efforts reduce this gap that we see here in the survey. Safety and security was another dimension we asked, and here we saw that all women customs agents that are normally the professionals that regularly visit the border, they reported that they felt unsafe in doing these visits. Among traders, the gender gap is reversed, with more men traders reporting that they felt unsafe. But in the setting we have in South Africa, normally the great majority of the visits at the borders, airports, ports, and land border posts are performed by intermediaries, representatives of the traders, I mean the customs agents. And the main reason that customs agents and traders reported for being for having this unsafe feeling is that the organization of the border, of the space with overcrowding and officials and authorities enabling some kind of harassment was the main cause for that. So some specific work could be done here to improve the organization of the space, appointing focal contact points and having communication strategy to ensure that anyone that feels unsafe can report their concerns, and proper action is taken on the ground at the borders. So this is something that the coordination mechanism between border agencies can also pay more in-depth attention. Other key survey findings related to gender is that regardless of the gender, men and women, bureaucratic and burdensome import-export process was indicated one of the top 3 challenges, but we had other challenges even more important, like expensive, complex transport and logistics and high tariff. So the bureaucracy on the import and export procedures was rated as the 3rd major challenge for expanding trade in international markets, regardless of the gender. And also, when we look by firm size, this issue about bureaucratic and burdensome import and export procedures become the 2nd most important issue for small and medium business. So for the small and medium business, this becomes the 2nd highest important issue to address in the trade facilitation reforms. And we also asked about COVID-19 challenges, and both women and men traders reported that they were highly affected by the pandemic, and both reported that 51% of traders reported that they have experienced longer clearance times, and this is very likely because of the additional controls imposed at the border in order to mitigate the spread of the virus. So longer clearance times was the highest impact of the COVID-19 challenge. Both men and women traders have also experienced declines, both in exports and imports. So the pandemic also affected the economic capacity for trade. And we know that more recently, after the survey was conducted, the international trade recovered in general in almost all jurisdictions, but they felt the impact of the pandemic in the time of the survey was applied. And we have a set of recommendations. I also encourage everyone to have a look in details of the recommendations. Some of them are already highlighted here. To improve access to and understand of official border regulations, have clear communication strategies for that. We feel there is a need to improve and enhance the role of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, and how to improve the coordination mechanism of the border agencies, and also how to engage the private sector in the design of these reforms. Publicize the official grievance procedures, use in the medium long term time, use the technology to enhance the trade facilitation, including the implementation of the trade single window, but also a trade information portal that compile all the regulations and information for the traders and customs professionals. So I encourage you all to have a look on the different recommendations, and basically this is what I wanted to highlight at this opportunity. I would like to thank you all for the opportunity of conducting this report. I would like to mention that without the SARS team, Tabili, Claudette, Matomi, and all the team that helped us, will not be able to achieve this report, but also all the traders and customs agents that took the time and responded to the survey and made it possible for us to display this report this morning. Thank you very much, Ray. I return the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Anani. Wow, that certainly is a thought-provoking result, and certainly gives us food for thought in terms of work that we can collaborate with our stakeholders in designing into the future to ensure that we empower women traders in particular, but also then some of the feedback from the male traders relating to some of the constraints that they are and challenges that they are experiencing. But thank you very much, Anani. I know it's very early where you are at this moment, so we are even more thankful to you for making the time to provide your presentation and the feedback on the survey report. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is again my great pleasure to introduce another special woman. She describes herself as a child of Africa. She is a proud South African. She is currently the General Manager of the South African Fruit and Vegetable Canners Export Council, as well as the association. She creates sustainable platforms for long-term growth and competitiveness of the fruit and vegetable processing industry. She is, of course, a very special partner in trade for us. She has a career of more than 20 years in agro-processing and food manufacturing, and is an active member of several related forums. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have Jill Atwood Palm join us today to share the private sector reaction to the report and her insights on how the industry is empowering women to participate more actively in trade opportunities. The floor is yours, Jill, and welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Ray. With that introduction, I nearly didn't recognize myself, but I do thank you for that introduction. Good morning to all. I'm not going to mention everyone by name, but I think we can all agree that we're certainly surrounded by a wonderful panel of speakers here today. And more importantly, that we have more than 100 participants online. So also good morning to our esteemed participants and attendees. And if I've left out everyone, I will just end with that and say all protocols are observed. My brief was, firstly, I have 5 minutes to do a very quick reflection and reaction of the survey as well as some of the findings. So I'm going to try and maximize my time and just hone in on some of the important points that I have noted. In terms of the actual survey, as an association and an export council, we were given the opportunity to participate in the survey, which was done round about, I think, July and August of last year. Just touching on the actual practicalities of the survey, I certainly think that it was accessible. It was certainly easy and very focused to encourage participation. So in terms of practicalities, I think we were able to participate quite easily, both online as well as telephonically. I engaged with a number of the World Bank representatives over the time of the actual survey. I think what I'd also like to mention, and that is just the involvement of the private sector in doing these surveys, is that, and I'm sure, anyone conducting a survey always hopes for a much bigger response. And the role that in fact was played by the export councils in this case is that through the Department of Trade and Industry, the DTIC, with the export councils, we were able to cast the net just a little bit wider in order to encourage participation from our members. So there was really excellent communication between the World Bank Group as well as the various stakeholders. But in terms of the actual timing of the survey, I think that was even more significant. It came almost in the heart of COVID, at a time when certainly in South Africa, all our fault lines were certainly highlighted. And when I say fault lines, I mean across on the social economic side of things, as well as on the trade side of things. I think on the socio-economic side of things, we certainly saw the inequality amongst the different role players. We've also saw all the fault lines in respect of the impact on lives and livelihoods, and particularly women in this case. On the trade facilitation side, every single one of those challenges was certainly highlighted during COVID. I think, we often focus as an export council, as industry, as business, more on promotions, marketing, all those things could not effectively be done during COVID. However, the area that certainly attracted the greatest attention was around trade facilitation, and that was issues that we experienced at the borders, at ports, the movement of goods, etc. So turning to the actual report and some of the findings that we heard here today, I haven't had a chance to have a look at the whole report. In fact, I haven't had access to the report, which I'm sure I will be able to access now after this meeting. So I do look forward to working through the full report. But just a reaction to some of the points raised here today, and I think it was captured quite succinctly as well. Definitely as a grouping, as a partnership of stakeholders, we need to deeply explore the value chain to identify all those opportunities, all the trade opportunities, the jobs, the skills for women specifically. We need to embed this almost in everything that we do. We also need to identify those blockages relating to trade facilitation, for example, cross-border issues, the tracking, the freight forwarding, the port inefficiencies, etc. Certainly, I mean, the issues are complex, but these are the issues that we really need to talk about in order for us to harness all those opportunities and the benefits for all stakeholders. The infrastructure that was also highlighted relating to rail, to road, to sea. And here we're not just talking about the quality of the infrastructure, but we're also talking about the safety and security issues surrounding the infrastructure relating to rail, to road, and to sea. Over and above addressing issues around customs and tariffs, what we also identified, particularly during COVID, were issues around non-tariff barriers. So whilst we're talking tariffs on the one hand, customs issues as well, we also need to look at the effective mechanisms to address the non-tariff barriers. The other reaction I have or reflection I have in terms of what was fed back today was that we need to make a deliberate or have a deliberate response around issues relating to the e-learning platforms, skills, training, information that's accessible to women specifically in terms of our policy framework, procedures, processes, reporting mechanisms, etc. We've seen from some of the responses on the survey that it was lower, in fact, amongst the female respondents. Then in terms of digitalization, also ensuring that there's access, training, and availability of stats and data in this respect. On the regulatory front, there is a need for the simplification, modernization, harmonization, as well as clarification of some of the tariff regimes, etc., in order for us to harness all those trade opportunities. And I think the time is right in order for us to really make sure that we tackle all these critical areas so that we position ourselves well for the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, so that we harness all the opportunities on the continent. So that said, just in conclusion, I think we heard a lot today about collaboration, about alignment, about a coordinated approach. And we cannot do that without a meaningful partnership between the public and the private sector. And in this respect, I mean, as an industry association, as an industry export council, we certainly have a big part to play, an interlocutory role in order to make sure that the private sector meets the public sector in order to deliver on some of these recommendations. We need that implementation vehicle in order to fully roll out the recommendations that have been highlighted in the report of today. So I do think that my time is up, and I certainly thank you for yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. You certainly also provided us with some food for thought and some really great ideas on how perhaps we can take these forward. So we look forward to engaging with your council and yourself in the future. Thank you. It is my privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you an exceptional partner in trade, who is the Senior Director of Customs Compliance and Regulatory Affairs from DHL Express Sub-Sahara Africa. In his own words, he is a logistics and express industry veteran with over 28 years experience within the courier and logistics industry. He is particularly focused on regulatory engagement and collaboration between the private sector and government, as well as other regulatory agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed privileged to have Jason Blackman with us today to share the private sector's reaction to the report and his insights on how to attract more skilled women to the industry. The floor is yours, Jason.
Thank you very much, Ray. And thank you for the opportunity to share the private sector's views on the report. I've had an opportunity to review some of the initial findings and listening to the presenters on this call today. Highlights a lot of the work that we're focused on in both at a DHL level, for example, within my own company, and also in some of the industry bodies that I represent, being the Express Parcel Association for South Africa, and the South African Institute of Tax Professionals. And a lot of the work and the objectives and the findings of the report align to very much to what we already knew, and very much to what our strategy and directions in terms of strategy have been focused on. Just in terms of the nature of our business, most people will be familiar with DHL. We're a courier express parcel operator who operate in all 51 countries in the sub-Saharan African region and have an expansive global footprint, and including a very, very significant one across South Africa. And we have a very strong focus on empowering female entrepreneurs. We recognize the gender imbalance in international trade and trade facilitation. And through a number of partnerships, we have a stated objective of reducing gender imbalances in international trade through our public-private partnerships and some of the partnerships we have with NGOs, including, for example, the GRZ. And that tends to be the focus of what our business approach is in terms of the subject matter, in terms of gender empowerment, gender imbalance, and addressing it through trade facilitation. Just in terms of the survey, I was very, very happy to see that this time around, the survey took a different approach to the online surveys that we normally get asked to complete. And this one was a telephonic interview. And in taking that telephonic interview and the different approach to the way that we normally get asked to give feedback, it enables the question and answer to be more interactive and to expand on the answers that you're giving to the interviewer. So if you have a qualified interviewer, what I found particularly enlightening through the World Bank's approach and their use of qualified interviewers last year when they did the survey, was that the face-to-face interview approach meant that there were less constraints on the feedback. We were able to give a more comprehensive overview versus the limiting effects that we sometimes find with online surveys. So very much a non-unilateral approach, and enabling the interviewer to expand on specific topics we needed and add to the level of detail that now reflects in the reports that we've seen and the more comprehensive findings that the reports present. In terms of our expectations, in terms of the course of regulatory actions or regulatory actions beyond the report and its recommendations, well, First of all, what was very interesting as a private sector representative was the views on inclusivity and regulatory reforms and legislative changes. We've seen, as we've mentioned in previous industry forums, that there's been a particularly strong drive, especially by SARS, to bridge this gap and facilitate the inclusivity of the private sector in the decision and legislative processes by inviting commentary, workshopping particular topics, and enabling, for example, private sector representation on the NTFC. And I suspect that the findings may particularly have been maybe skewed a little bit by the fact that those representations are more at an industry level than individual levels. But still, having an industry level approach enables a more focused effort. But I just wanted to say from the start, in terms of our feedback, that we've seen incredibly good progress in building the public-private partnership, especially with SARS and the other regulatory agencies. SARS are very much aligned with the fact that the private sector have a part to play in addressing these imbalances, and that we have a part to play in addressing some of the opportunities. And we work very much in lockstep with SARS in terms of addressing these issues. And some of the SARS colleagues that are on this call, I'm very familiar with. We work together, we work very well together, and we share and leverage off each other's experiences. And the report is quite correct in recognizing that women traders face imbalances. We've seen it in our own research. We've seen it in the research that we've done with other NGOs. And especially what does stand out that in our own research is the lack of information and knowledge of cross-border regulations and procedures, the corruption in other border posts, and then the non-tariff measures such as standards and regulations and lengthy port handling or customs procedures. That does align to some of our own internal findings. But for us, some of the key recommendations that we think will be absolutely critical in taking this forward, the published reports, and the reports sometimes just become that, a published report that sits in an archive. But this type of report is the opportunity to take some actions out of it and to implement them, some of which are already in process or in progress, and others where we have an opportunity to add and bring into the pot, so to speak, some of our experiences and the work that we're doing. One, of course, leveraging off the public partnerships, such as using technology to enhance trade facilitation. So we're very much proponents of single window, and there's a number of activities that we're looking at, especially within South Africa, such as port health, on how do we enhance trade facilitation through digitization, streamlining of border processes and procedures. Again, lots of submissions being made by the private sector that SARS are looking at in terms of how do we streamline them, what do we see as the potentially what potential hindrances we've seen at the borders. We've seen improvement, but not yet quite there, access to and understanding of border regulations. Sometimes they're very complex, and one of the things that DHL and some of our NGOs that we work with have been doing is unpacking those regulatory frameworks into simple models that are understandable by cross-border traders. And that's particularly becoming more and more important. And one of the things that we're seeing being most asked of us is, what do these regulations mean for us, especially during COVID? As the regulations, for example, rapidly change, we were being asked on a number of occasions, what does this mean to my business? Can you tell me what I'm required to do to adjust my business model to the new requirements? And so supporting the private sector and our female entrepreneurs in terms of understanding and what those regulatory requirements are will become critical, and harmonizing them across Africa. I know that this report is focused on South Africa, but I think it's important in the context of, for example, the African Continental Free Trade Area, that we harmonize our regulatory frameworks with those around Africa and bring them into alignment in such a way that everybody is essentially singing off the same hymn sheet. Identifying and addressing reasons for the delayed release of goods, I think, is critical. We need that level of visibility. We're starting to see progress towards getting that through the various reporting mechanisms that are in place. Some work still to be done, but I think together with the private sector and developing key measurements, I think we will create, going into 2022 and 2023, better visibility on those trade measures. And then the last comment I'd like to make is just increasing the visibility of the NTFC and its work, including the regular meetings that we need to be seeing on a more regular basis. It's the only issue that we've perhaps seen during COVID and the limitations that COVID have placed on us, but more regular meetings of the NTFC, I think, would be critical, including the private partnership. And one example there is, I remember when we first started the NTFC meetings back 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and I can't actually remember how far back we started. It was initially the regulatory agency presenting themselves as the NCFC. And then as that partnership progressed, so we became a more inclusive partner, it became a roundtable discussion rather than sitting in your forum in Pretoria, if I remember correctly, sitting in the chairs like a cinema arrangement where you're watching a movie. And it progressed from that presentation to the private sector, moving towards getting us around a table, in fact, and listening to what we had to say. And it was that level of inclusivity that was why I said at the beginning, I was a bit surprised by the findings that some of the respondents didn't feel they were included in those decision processes, because we've seen a shift, a very tangible shift towards more inclusivity in that decision-making process. And we're looking forward to what this year brings. We've already seen, for example, SARS moving towards bringing the WCO out and looking at how we can simplify and streamline trade. So we're very excited about what the future holds. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you very much, Jason. And again, as with Joel, you've given us some great food for thought and certainly appear to have populated our business plans for the next financial year. Thank you very much for sharing those insights with us. They certainly are valued. Thank you. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is another exceptional woman. She has dedicated more than 20 years to developing small businesses in South Africa and now finds herself as the Executive Manager, Enterprise Development Division at the Small Enterprise Development Agency, or SEDA, as we call it. She has over 26 years experience working in senior challenging roles in the enterprise development space at SEDA and the Department of Economic Development and Planning, and has occupied various key board positions. She is, in her words, a total management solution within the small to medium enterprise development space, having set up and managed various initiatives that have enhanced the entrepreneurial and small business landscape in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have Ntokozo Majolo join us today to share the public sector's reaction to the report and her insights on reducing the constraints and challenges facing women in informal cross-border trade in the region. Thank you, Ntokozo, and we hand over to you.
Thank you very much for your warm introduction, Ray. Just to utilize my time properly, I'm not going to mention all the gracious panelists by name, except to say all protocol observed. South Africans will understand that term. So SEDA is an entity of the Department of Small Business Development that is responsible for providing business development services to small businesses. We have another sister agency that focuses on finance. Having heard the presentation and also browsed through the summary of the key findings and recommendations, there is a lot of scope for collaboration in taking some of the recommendations forward within SEDA's mandate. And maybe briefly, for the sake of those who aren't very familiar with SEDA, we work across the entire spectrum of the business life cycle, the different stages of the business life cycle of any business. So we work with startup businesses, starting with informal businesses. There's a special program that we are jointly implementing with CIFA, as well as the Department of Small Businesses, to support informal traders. It's called the Township and Rural Enterprise Development Program, which started as a response mechanism during COVID to sustain the informal sector in South Africa. We have since institutionalized that program as a portfolio as part of the department's response to the economic recovery plan. And from the 2 years that we've implemented it, we've learned some lessons. We've done an assessment of where the bottlenecks that results into low uptake of the program, and we've since improved it. And the reason I'm mentioning this program here is because there is a lot to take out of the presentation and the survey that was conducted in really looking at issues that are relevant to cross-border trade in the informal sector by also way of research in looking for solutions. One of the recommendations from this research was the need for conducting further research on specific areas. There is a lot of scope and opportunity to do that currently, because there are a lot of academics that are currently focusing on various aspects of the informal sector, and there is one in particular that is going to be countrywide and is led by a big group of academics from various tertiary institutions across the country. So we'll be more than willing to make input in that regard. We also work with operational businesses that are in the growth phase, especially in relation to improving their competitiveness and supporting them with programs that will support them, enable them to access the local markets, local value chain. The second one is also looking at localization as a way of replacing import and stimulating the manufacturing sector in South Africa. There is also a program that is led by the department, and obviously we are implementing it as the department's agency. The third one is also our programs that are looking at international expansion, export development programs, and trade facilitation. I'll come back to that in a little while. One of the findings also point to the gap and need for more education, information sharing, and awareness. We are already collaborating with SARS CEDA through our nationwide footprint in the various provinces, mainly on the tax education side, but we can also capitalize on that platform that we already have with SARS and incorporate the education element of trade facilitation and in lack of information that has been pointed out by this survey, to make sure that there is wider information dissemination, especially to women. One of the key programs that are focused on trade facilitation that CEDA is implementing is the She Trades program, is the WTO and UNDP program that is implemented by the International Trade Centre. So on behalf of the Department of Small Business Development, CEDA is hosting the She Trades program in South Africa. The sole purpose of this program is facilitating and enabling participation of women in global value chain. From the 2 years that we started implementing this program, I'm happy to say currently we have a total of 2,500 women that have been registered on the She Trades. The focus until now has mainly been on exposure to opportunities that are available in various international markets. For example, we supported about 20 women in partnership with She Trade to participate in Intra-Africa Trade Fair that was hosted by South Africa in November last year. We also supported a group of women earlier this year to participate at the Pan-African Women's Summit that took place in Zanzibar. And lastly, in a trade fair that took place in Ghana, also in March this year. Our next focus is going to be really looking at the key capacity building issues that affect women and inhibit them from accessing the global value chain and export opportunities. And the findings of this research are very well timed in a sense that we will incorporate them in the capacity building program of the She Trade program, which we will be launching on the 6th of May as a partnership and will be led by our minister as well as the executive director of the International Trade Center. The other reason the She Trades program is important is the technology utilization of the platform. And it also came in at a very opportune time because we were in the middle of COVID, but we were able to proceed with our trade facilitation program because this is a virtual platform that enables virtual participation. We had the Dubai Expo, but we were not able to send any people to participate physically because of the high number of cases at that time, but we were able to allow participation virtually, which would not have happened had it not been for the She Trades platform. We also have another program that is supported by the EU funded program in South Africa, which is called the Ecosystem Development for Small Enterprise Support. And one of the interventions we're also working on is an e-platform for facilitating export, which I think is what everybody else has said here, because of the lessons from COVID, where we all found ourselves crippled because of travel restrictions. We are also piloting an e-learning platform with the Sherry Blair Foundation. They have a platform that is focusing specifically on women called Her Venture, which is going to focus mainly on the informal sector, but with piloting that platform to deliver our training and learning programs for women, firstly to extend our reach as CEDA, because we can't be in we are unable to be in every small town, every small village, but also to enable delivery of services without us relying on physical presence. And lastly, and maybe this is also targeted to my colleagues from SARS, that there's a lot of what was shared from the survey and in the report that I think needs to find expression in the red tape reduction program that is led by the presidency, because there are a lot of regulations that tend to inhibit the entry of women in trade facilitation. And it's one of my recommendations that some of these findings find expression in that platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thokozo. You weren't exaggerating when you said that you are a total management solution within the small and medium enterprise development space. You have listed a long list of initiatives that I foresee will be able to add value to women in trade in particular. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't been a really good program director. We're way over time, so my apologies for that, but I felt it's not often that women in trade get an opportunity to flight their issues. So today I have deliberately allowed some creep into our time. My apologies for that. My time, unfortunately, is up. It's been exhilarating, it's been exciting, spent in the morning with all of you, and it has sincerely been worth waiting 37 years for. I certainly have gleaned a great deal of insight on what I can do to promote gender equality and reduce the marginalization of women in cross-border trade. And I now am going to hand you over to another extraordinary woman who I'm very happy to say is a dear friend and a colleague, Tabile Ntobela, who will be closing. Thank you, Tabile.
Thank you, Program Director. I think in the interest of time, with the greatest respect to all the speakers, suffice to say, all protocol observed. Maybe for starters, just a quick one to take the advantage of sharing for those who may not be aware. Our program director, Ms. Vivier, was elected as the vice chair of the Safe Working Group at the WCO. The private sector will know how important the Safe Working Group is in dealing with supply chain security issues. And I'm mentioning this because it speaks directly to one of our strategic objectives of building confidence and trust in SARS as an institution. And her election is testimony to the confidence that the international community, customs community has in SARS. So it's important in that sense. Today as well is very important. The launch of the report today again speaks to two of our strategic objectives, and is very important for us. One of them is about working with and through stakeholders to improve the tax and customs system. And the report at today's event is really a culmination of working with a number of stakeholders for a few months, starting I think around May last year, when the survey was still conceptualized up until it was conducted, and the results that we're having today. Working with the World Bank, working with the consultants from Surveyor, working with our valued private sector holders, that culminated in the work that is showing in the reports that we have today. So it's very important that we continue to work with our stakeholders going forward. Again, the launch of this report also speaks to another strategic objective of the using of data for insight and improved outcomes. It bears testament to the fact that we want to be data-centric. We want to be evidence-based. Now, the report findings provide us with that evidence so that the interventions that we develop are actually informed by the issues that have been raised by the clients that we are trying to target in those interventions. So it's critical for us to highlight the fact that we don't just talk of these strategic objectives, but we live them in terms of the way we do things and how we engage with our stakeholders. So this provides us with that opportunity to take the process forward. I was going to speak to quite a few of the key findings of the report, but in the interest of time, maybe what I can do is looking at the key findings, sort of trying to group all of them. I can group them in probably three areas. One speaks to education. Our traders have indicated that they require education in terms of customs processes and procedures. And again, this speaks to our first objective of providing clarity to our traders. And we certainly get that message, and we are certainly going to do that. And working with internally, we have a taxpayer education unit We also have a small business unit within SARS and the customs operations as well. So we are going to be looking at those initiatives from an education of the taxpayer point of view, and working with our stakeholders to design initiatives responding to the issues that have come up from the survey. The second grouping of the findings relates to probably consistency in the application of the customs processes, the concerns that have been raised there. Again, if you look at our second strategic objective, it speaks to making it easy for our taxpayers to comply. So we are going to certainly look at all the issues that have been raised and make sure that we live up to that strategic objective of simplifying and making it easy for our women traders to comply to their obligations in SARS. And the third one, I would group it under collaboration. Again, speaking to that strategic objective of working with and through stakeholders. And I'm happy that if we have listened to all the speakers, there are already initiatives that are there, both from the private sector, from CEDA as well, that we can tap into to see how we take the report to its proper implementation and benefit for the women traders. It's certainly not going to lie on the shelves, but we are going to be working in collaboration with both the private sector and the public sector. We've got the border management agency that we are going to work with other public sector departments. We've got our trade and industry and competition. I know that an issue has been raised around the effectiveness of the National Committee on Trade Facilitation. SARS is co-chairing that committee. So we were also going to be looking into how do we improve on working with the private sector through that committee as well. And other departments in the private sector. We already have engagements. I think Mr. Blackman also made mention of the fact that we already have engagements with the private sector. We probably need to strengthen and make sure that we are more inclusive in those engagements. Now, the collaboration is not only with our national stakeholders. I mean, we're talking about cross-border trade. So it does mean that we also look across the border, working with other countries to make sure that we facilitate trade. I mean, efficiencies on the one side of the border mean nothing if they are not reciprocated on the other side of the border. So we need to work quite closely with other countries to make sure that we improve on the efficiencies and really give meaning to trade facilitation for our women traders. This also means that we also need to, we'll also be able to take advantage of the advantages, the benefits that come with the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I mean, in the words of our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and I quote, "We must use the African Continental Free Trade Area to advance the empowerment of Africa's women, one of the most important objectives of Agenda 2063. Improving Africa's women's access to trade opportunities not only facilitates economic freedom for women, but also expands the productive capacity of countries. The African Continental Free Trade Area must facilitate greater trade opportunities for women and focus on removing tariff barriers to trade." So we are going to be collaborating with a number of stakeholders to ensure that we really facilitate trade. I think in the words of Ms. Marinelle, women economic empowerment is smart economics. So if we live up to that and really ensure that the report doesn't gather dust, SARS is going to be facilitating the different engagements with the different stakeholders to take this process forward. Let me then take this opportunity to thank all those who have made this happen. the UK government for providing the funding so that we are able to get to where we are today. Without that funding, we would not have been able to launch this survey. Thanks to the WCO as well for always being a good partner and linking us up with the different funders to enable our programs to go forward, and especially with the Deputy Secretary General for always being supportive of the initiatives. I see there is load shedding on my side. Also, a big thank you to the World Bank for facilitating this survey, and the consultants that we worked with, the Surveyor Global. They would know the challenges that we had in conducting this survey. It took quite a while to reach out to the private sector. Also, a big thank you to our valued members of the private sector, because had they not responded to our call, we would not be here today. And it is important that they speak to us so that we are able to respond and make things easier and actually facilitate trade. So we're really grateful to the private sector. We'll continue to engage them going forward in this. Also to the project team within SARS, it's been wonderful working together, and I think the fruit of your labor are showing a successful event, an important event in the sense that women issues and trade facilitation remain high on the agenda. And to the program director, thank you for facilitating this important day. And I know that the timing was not the perfect one, but it was important that we were able to launch this report in spite of doing it a day before the Easter holiday. But in spite of that, a lot of you were able to turn up. Thank you for sacrificing your time and being part of this great initiative. And as indicated, further collaboration, and we are going to be consulting and taking the process forward. For those who are celebrating Easter, happy Easter. Please, those who are traveling, drive safely, wear your mask, and keep safe. And on that note, over to you, IT, for that final video. But thanks a lot. Thanks for your participation. I appreciate all the support that we've gotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabile, for a very profound closing. For those of you that still have time, please stay with us for a photo shoot after the video. Thank you.
Fellow South Africans, I'm addressing you.
All your years of paying tax, you still wonder, why does it matter?
It is true that we are facing a great emergency.
It matters now more than ever. It matters to those who are exposed to harm to keep us away from it. The ones that leave behind all that they love. Your tax matters to them. Those who spend endless hours standing on their feet to care for others. It matters to those who are always at the heart of any crisis and our future generations. It matters to those who put so much love into giving selflessly to each and every family living on the breadline. It matters to all of us. To all taxpayers, pay your fair share. Do it for your nation. Your tax matters.
Thank you very much. Those that can, please turn on your videos so we can start posting photos on social media. If the technology can help us, please. Particularly the speakers.
Without your earphones, Jason.
All right.
Level, when you're ready, then you can just take the picture.
Yes, Kesh, I just need to spotlight everyone first.
Kesh, for some reason, I can't turn on my camera. I don't know why.
Because we're scared you're going to make us all look ugly. That's why.
Very dark on my side. I think I'm load shedding.
Level, just send Tabile the request to switch on video.
Yes, Kesh, I'm working on it. Okay, you can go ahead, Tabile.
Anani?
I cannot turn on my video, but I'd like to thank you all for all the cooperation. And Ray, thank you. You were great today.
Wait, hold on. Level, just send the video request.
Yes, Kesh.
And Anani, we're going to send you, there we are. You should be able to be online now. There we go. That's great.
Okay, I got the picture.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's been an absolutely fabulous event. I really have been so proud to be part of this. I get a little weepy. And then to all of those that have congratulated me, thank you very much. You know, I'm going to bring to the WCO a passion that they haven't yet seen, I would suggest, for female issues in the trade space. And hopefully, by the time I assume the position of co-chair in 2 years' time, we will be dealing with a very different safe framework of standards that has been designed to look specifically at the needs of women and also small businesses in the South African context. So thank you for all of you that have shared. I am also exceedingly proud, not only for SARS, but also for the country to be represented in that space. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Have a blessed Easter if you're celebrating Easter. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
To you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes,
Thank
goodbye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Level, you can just play the ending video.
Yes, Kesh.
Please stop YouTube.